Good day, chess world. So we continue our wonderful exploration of the book Logical Chess Move by Move, a wonderful classic focused on taking beginner chess players and intermediate chess players from just knowing the rules and tactics into trying to understand the game. And today we go through game 21, which is the author himself. Chernev plays against Honeybomb in New York, 1942. And here with this game, we're going to see Chernobyl apply some of these great principles of the kingside attack. There's earlier games that we've looked at with the Queen's Pawn, game 17, 18, 19, and 20, were all focused on queenside play, finding a weakness, a gap in the opponent's queenside, targeting that weakness, using that, and in some cases switching across, but very much the principle of two weaknesses. This game from Chernev is a return to the classic ideas of quick mobilization and then focusing on developing an attack on the enemy king side. So let's have a look as this one gets in. So starts with the queen pawn game. Pawn to d5, knight f3, pawn to e6. A very flexible move at this stage, maybe a bit limiting to black, blocking in their bishop, but nonetheless still helping with development and very much the same theme of the Queen's Gambit declined, where black calmly develops their pawns. So now we get pawn to e3, the beginning of the collie opening. Now we've seen this in a few earlier games, and this strategy for white is focused on simple development. Get the light squared bishop out, get castled quickly, and then later they will push pawn to e4 once they are ready to open the game. So here we get pawn c5. This is just as we've seen in the previous game, the Tarrasch defense setup, where black uses the c5 pawn to put maximum pressure onto white's center. So white reinforces that center with c3. And this brings us to a valuable theme in the queen's pawn games. Generally, you don't want to block in your c pawns because they are very useful either to attack the center or protect the center. And in this case, we can see both of them really fighting and contributing to the solid development center. So knight to f6, okay. Bishop to d3, we get very calm and clear development in this case. And then, of course, knight c6, knight bd2, and this is the basic setup of the collie. The intended idea is that when the opportunity is correct, white will push pawn to e4. We can see they've been very simple and focused on the easy development. Black too has got a very good structure with good queenside pressure with their pawn over here. If those of you that are actually recognizing patterns, in a few games earlier, we saw this exact same structure, but in that case, it was the colors reversed, where these were white pawns, and of course, this was black structure. So now we're getting to learn some patterns and themes. There, it was called the Queen's Gambit against the Semi-Slav. And now we're going to see some wonderful ideas that could be adapted to be playing the Semi-Slav as well. So bishop to e7, castles, before he makes any decision about the center. He finishes his development, and black does the same. Now, white still would like to push their pawn into e4, but they see the importance of first mobilizing and getting their queen into the game. So now white has only one piece left to find a job for, and that, of course, is this dark squared bishop. And that will be the story of what he's going to solve. Black here makes a bit of an error. Not a huge substantial mistake, but certainly not the best development of their position. As we can see here, black should try and solve the problem of this bishop. And in many of the games, we've seen this idea already of pushing b6, getting to the bishop on the long light square diagonal. And although it is blocked by this pawn, it is still better placed than where it currently sits. So now, black plays rook e8, and white would like to push their pawn to e4 here. But not so simple, because we've looked at earlier structures like this, and here they don't want to leave themselves with a weakened pawn structure. Let's unpack. First and foremost, if he pushes e4, there is a very simple problem. So here, in this case, the pawn would capture on e4, the knight would capture back, Pawn takes, and now he has this weakened pawn. And this is part of the problem here, where he will lose a pawn on d4. Valuable for us to see this, that white does not want to leave themselves with that problem on the square. So this is why white trades first out of the center with pawn takes c5, setting up the opportunity to break with pawn to e4. Very instructive and creative here. So now we get bishop takes on c5, and then we get this wonderful theme, e4. He expands in the middle of the board with a wonderful growth of his structure. So black at this stage decides to play e5, a really reasonable move. The intent by black is rather clear, that black wants to control the center and mobilize as much as they can. They're solving the problem of this bishop. In this case, it was probably a bit better to drop the bishop back, as black, we will see, has some time issues. Now, in the game, when they played pawn to e5, white follows, pawn takes d5, knight takes d5, and then frees his position with this move of knight to b3. Even stronger, as we will discover, is to send the knight towards the middle of the board with the intention that he controls g5, his bishop can join in as well. This is a little bit better, but Chernev has a nice idea of how he wants to develop, and his opponent plays the queen to b6. This is an outright mistake, an error, missing some opportunities in his position. And here we're going to see a very creative solution from Chernev, because if we just look at the black king side, I hope you've been studying, going through the notes that I've been sending those that joined up to the mailing list, and as well those that have watched the earlier videos. The king side for black is barren of defense. There's no pieces there. And this presents an opportunity to white. How many pieces can they bring in? What chances are there? Also, we're learning about activity. And we can see that this bishop is very active in this position. So there is an opportunity for him to strike, and strike quickly. He chooses to play bishop takes h7 check. A very nice little combination. Certainly, we could also have played knight g5, which would be very strong, but his choice is practical and good. There is a check. The opponent captures back, and simply queen check, winning back the material, but with interest. He's sacrificed a piece, and now he gains a pawn in this one. So the opponent plays king to g8. Chernev follows with queen takes d5. And now the opponent himself plays bishop to f8. A little bit passive, not noticing the danger, because now white has won material, and what should they do? Well, a lot of chess literature will tell you, trade off, trade, trade, trade. You've won material, you should just trade. As we know, that is not true. When you've won material, the first thing you should ask, can you use the extra material to successfully attack the enemy king? We've got to focus on the king. We win in chess because you checkmate. And yes, there are different paths to achieve it, but it's important to keep the pressure on the enemy king. So here we see that although this is our extra pawn and it can't help us on the attack, we still focus that the enemy king is in trouble. So we continue the attack, knight g5, a wonderful little scene. Now black, noticing the problem on f7, attempts to defend with bishop to e6, but walks themselves into a larger problem, because f7 was not their weakest square on their king side. They were in a great deal of difficulty. And white follows on with a very nice queen e4. h7 is in so much trouble. So I want you to think about this position and remember this, as there are two pieces now attacking that weakened square. And this is so instructive in this case. So black plays g6. We continue to press on the opponent's weakness. So queen to h4, so very instructive. Thank you very much. Now that is again a mate threat. So black tries to defend with bishop g7. Now we have an important question. We definitely are doing very well with white. The queen and the knight have set up these threats of checkmate, but black has, if you will, fianchetto now to solve this problem, that when we play check, the king would simply run away. Well, that is our target. We need another piece to assist, to deal with the king trying to run away. And Chernev finds a wonderful follow-on, bishop to e3, developing his bishop with time. And although we could say that white was a little bit slow to finish the opening, black never got a chance to try and mobilize their extra pieces into the game. And now there is this opportunity where the queen moves to a6. Think a little. How would you continue? What would you do to continue this attack? Because we built up a wonderful opportunity with white, but the question is how to follow. And again, the focus is bring as many pieces to attack the enemy king as possible. The enemy king is weak. We want to get at them. And of course, if we look, the knight is covering f7, helping with queen h7. The bishop potentially going to c5 presents an opportunity and a chance to get at the king. But this minor piece is our worst place piece. Let's get it across and into the party. So knight to c4, another piece joins in. So black decides to play queen c4. They would like to trade queens. Now, so much of chess literature will tell you, yes, it's good to trade queens, because if we trade off, we can try and win another pawn. We're a pawn up. But no, I want you to remember, if the enemy king is weak, their position is weak. And the best piece to take advantage of that weak king is, of course, our queen. So we continue the attack, a wonderful check. Now the opponent plays king to f8, trying to run away. How do we continue this attack? This position looks so promising. We have the knight, we have the other knight that can get involved. How do we coordinate? And then we follow the series of forcing moves. He simply plays knight takes with this queen side knight, taking the bishop, check. Very few choices now for black. Black simply takes with the pawn. Then we play queen takes g6, and now we have a mate threat on f7. Wow, very difficult position to defend. In this case, he tries to play this move of knight to d8. What would you do to follow? How would you keep going? Because we have one more material. We're up 2 pawns. Once again, the question is, how should we follow on here? And the correct path is to try and maximize the pieces that you can get into this position. And he follows on in a wonderful theme. We want another piece to attack the king. What piece can we get? We play knight check. And here the opponent is struggling. The opponent actually resigns, because if they were to move their king to g8, simply knight check, and then the rook will fall. This is too much in this position. There would be a rook down, plus they'll be mated shortly. If they were to run up the board in this situation, they, of course, simply lose the bishop with check. And a completely winning position has come about. And I want you to see how Chernev had been, again, besides moving this c2 pawn to c3, all his other pawns were focused on these middle pawns, not wasting time by moving pawns on the side of the board. Also, the other feature was his ability to weaken the king using the sacrifice of bishop takes h7 check, and how that was able to set up this opportunity against the opponent. And I do want to remember that fact and that theme. That worked wonderfully well to cause all of that trouble. So when we look at this position, he broke through the middle and secured this opportunity. Queen b6 was very clearly a mistake, allowing white to generate a wonderful attacking opportunity on the king side. And this quick victory came about by quick, efficient development and the attention to detail that the enemy king side here was lacking protection. The pieces were gone. Wonderful theme, wonderful attack. Again, if you're interested in the notes to this series, and just some exercises I've put together as well so that you can further grow your learning with these videos, join the mailing list below, and we'll continue on this wonderful exploration of Chernev's work, Logical Chess.